All right, so this is my review of the Cowboys loss to the Eagles in the first game of the season. As far as the team stats, pretty even, about 300 yards each. Dallas had 1 turnover, pretty much the amount of first downs. Eagles had way too many penalties, including the Carter one. So the Eagles got to get that cleaned up. They're a super emotional team. Both did well on third down. Neither really attempted a fourth down, but the Cowboys didn't get it. That would have probably won them the game because that was on the final drive. In the red zone, Eagles were 3 for 3. Looks like the Cowboys were 2 for 3. Eagles led time on possession by quite a bit. Not just because of Saquon, but because Hurts could rush, so that helped. All in all, I wouldn't, as the Eagles fan, I wouldn't panic about this game. I think that squeaking out the win against a Cowboys team that's not projected to do much is, at home game, season opener, but the Super Bowl presentation or whatever, in theory, should be worrisome, but you did get a win against a divisional opponent. That's always a tough thing to do. You got it without Jalen Carter. He spit in Dak Prescott's face before the first play of the game. Jalen Carter is super immature. We all know that, but he's incredibly talented. So the Cowboys were able to run all over I wouldn't say all over, but they were able to run up the middle, which I don't think would have happened. I don't know if Javonte Williams is getting those 1-yard touchdowns at the goal line, because that's exactly what a Carter would have been. So who knows if the Cowboys would have even put up half the points they put up if that didn't happen. What I do think is a little concerning for the Eagles is they were saying during the broadcast, looks like there's like 11 defensive players that are no longer on the defense, which seems like a lot. They said that's the most from like any Super Bowl returning team from, I think, like either side of the ball before. Obviously notable losses, Brandon Graham, Sweat, players along their defensive line. Darius Slay with the Steelers, CJ Gardner-Johnson, that's a big one. So they kept their linebackers, though, and they still have Jalen Carter, so that's obviously a big deal. And I still think they're still very solid at corner. I mean, Gardner-Johnson and Slay are amazing, but you could see that that DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell held their own. Quinyon Mitchell should have had a game-stealing interception. He dropped it. DeJean did good. He got lucky that CD dropped that pass at the end that went right, I wouldn't say right through his hands, but it was catchable for CD. That would have actually won the Cowboys the game. So the Cowboys almost won this game, but I think the big thing to pay attention here is a lot of points in the first half. That makes sense. Defense is kind of getting their footing. Dallas holding the Eagles to just a field goal in the second half. Very impressive by their defense. Very concerning that Philly offense only got 3 points. Obviously, equally concerning the Cowboys couldn't do anything in the second half offensively, but that's not a surprise. I mean, this is supposed to be a good defense, and they had a good showing, but I think CD dropping a lot of balls at the end, I think he dropped 3 huge passes, would have completely changed these stats. And honestly, even who won. So if we look at it here, Dak and Jalen both had decent passing games. Nothing crazy. One thing to note is that Jalen did lead the team in rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. So he was great at the dual threat stuff there. The Cowboys did not have, well, I guess you could say Javonte Williams was their premier running back. Around 50 yards. Miles Sanders pretty much got all of his 50 yards on one play and then fumbled the next play. So I think Williams is safe to beat the starter for anybody that wants to know for fantasy reasons. Barkley did good. 60 yards on 18 carries isn't amazing, but he made the impact plays when they needed to be made. He got the first downs when they knew to get first downs. He did, I think, drop 1 pass, but he had a couple catches that extended, I think, third down, so he did pretty good. Receiving, this just looks like typical Cowboys receiving. Just force-feed CeeDee Lamb. Should have been 200 yards if he didn't drop all those catches. Disappointed that Pickens wasn't more involved. I would definitely keep an eye out for that for not only fantasy reasons, but for the sake of the Cowboys. They need to figure out how to get him more involved because he can make great plays. A.J. Brown having only one reception on 1 target. Yeah, 1 target. I don't know what's up with that. That's terrible. Last year was a similar scenario. They've got to figure that out. And then you've got the defensive stuff here. I guess the big thing for the Eagles is Zach Bond. I thought he tried too hard to make too many plays. He tried to force that fumble on that long run. He could have got Miles Sanders down like 40 yards before, but he did make some good plays when he needed to. Some turnovers when they needed to. So, all in all, I would say that, I guess this game, I wouldn't say this game went as expected, but for an Eagles fan, they did what they needed to do to get the win. For a Cowboys fan, they were more impressive than I thought they would be. Both of these teams should feel pretty good about where they're at. And the Eagles getting Jalen Carter back, they should be poised to, I think, be the best team in the NFC. That's my prediction. And the Cowboys should be shooting for above 500. So we'll see what happens there. What I'd like to see in the future from both these teams, from the Cowboys' perspective, as I mentioned, got to get Pickens more involved. That's going to completely change their offense. I'd like to see them commit a little bit more to the run. Seems like Javonte Williams, even though he only on a 3.6 yard per carry average, we're starting to get a little bit momentum against a pretty solid Eagles defense. So I want to see them keep that up. And Dak will be Dak, and I think they'll be fine. Defensively, they did what they needed to do in the second half. So if they can keep that up, I mean, they still have great players. They obviously just don't have Micah Parsons anymore. If they can keep that up, I think that they can have a pretty decent season. I don't know, but I don't know about, being like a legitimate threat, but could they make the playoffs? Sure. As one of the last teams in, probably. Wild card, definitely. Eagles offense, the only thing they could have done better is getting A.J. Brown more involved. That just has to happen. That's the only way they move forward and are extremely successful. They need to have that deep threat. Defensively, they got to keep their immature players. In the game, they have so much talent defensively. I just think time is what's gonna bring this unit together. I didn't love that Adoree Jackson was kind of exposed, so I think they might need to figure out a plan there. See if there's anyone they can get to pair with Mitchell and DeJean. But I did like the play of them, of Blankenship, of even Makuva. I just like their secondary play. And then Jahad Campbell had a pretty good game. So I liked what their rookies had, the production that they had. And so I just want to see that continue. And the Eagles will be fine this year. There's no reason they shouldn't be back in the Super Bowl from an NFC perspective. All right, let me give the fantasy grades real quick. So Dak's one of those quarterbacks you really want to only play if you're in a 12, 14, 16 league. Team came lead. So I would say he's always like a solid B. You have to play him. He didn't find Javonte Williams. For him, did amazing. Let's say B+. 2 touchdowns is a big deal. Pretty much all the carries. Didn't love his yards per carry. And didn't love that he only got 50 yards. That would have put him in an A if you could have got, maybe 70, 75. So give him a B there. Anybody that has Miles Sanders, I wouldn't hold on to him. He had one big run that got him the majority. There we go. 49-yard rush for the... So he only had 40 yards outside of that on 3 other carries. CeeDee Lamb, I'm going to say an A- because 7 receptions, 110 yards is great for any receiver, including CeeDee. It could have been close to 200, as I mentioned earlier, if he didn't have those 2 or 3 big drops at the end of the game. George Pickens, I'm going to give a C-. I'm not saying it's his fault. He only had 4 targets. He caught 3 of them for 30 yards. He did have a big one that extended the game at the end. So he was reliable. He just Dak didn't look his way enough, or at least throw out his way off. Ferguson, let's go with a C+. Targets were there, receptions were there. Not a lot of yardage. Didn't break any tackles, so I didn't love that. After that, I don't think any of these players are worth having. So, and then the Dallas defense, let's say C plus, just because they didn't cause any turnovers, but the C plus comes in because the Eagles offense is good, and holding them to 24 points is pretty solid in my opinion. From the Eagles' perspective, I would say Jalen Hurts. I would give him an A flat. I'm tempted to give him an A plus because he had the 2 rushing touchdowns, led the team in rush yards, 60 rushing yards for a quarterback is amazing, especially, or even for Jalen. I'd almost say especially. He can do it, but he's not Lamar where he does it every game. So let's give him an A flat. The only thing I would give him an A plus is just a better passing game. But I know the Cowboys corners are pretty good. Saquon, I try not to be biased because for him, this is pretty much like a C game before an average running back. So on a fair scale, let's say this game was a let's say a B flat. I mean, 60 yards isn't great. 3.3 yards per carry. Did have a touchdown, so that helps bring him into the B flat, I would say. For your average running back, you'd be happy with that. But for Saquon, you would like to see more. I wouldn't have any of these other running backs on my fantasy team. I wouldn't have thought that you'd want to have Jahan Dotson. For him, he rated pretty high for a standard receiver. I give him B or B plus, 3 receptions, 59 yards, not bad at all. I mean, it was really off one big 51-yard catch, but still. Goddard, yardage isn't great, but 7 receptions. I would say that's honestly for a tight end, that's an A minus. That's 7 points right there, plus 4.5 right there. So you're looking at a little over 11 points. That's pretty good for tight end. Looks like Saquon added 4 more catches. So let's actually bump up that B to a B plus because of the catches. Devontae Smith, I'm going to give him a C minus. 3 targets, he caught them all, but it wasn't for many yardage. And then A.J. Brown is an F. Again, the Cowboys corners are good. It shows on Smith and Brown getting nothing done, but that does still worry me for the future. If you see this trend continue and you have Smith, especially Brown, I would look to trade them. I'll wait for them to have a big game, and then I'd like to trade them because this is 2 years in a row that Brown hasn't done anything, unfortunately. And then finally, the Eagles defense. Let's go with a B plus. Allowing 20 points to a decent offense is all right, especially with Jalen Carter. They had a couple turnovers, so I like that. Wait a second. They had a fumble recovery. Yep, Quinyon Mitchell. And they made the stops when they needed to. Stopped 2 touchdowns to turn into 2 field goals. So I like seeing that. So I'll give them that rating there.